What's up everyone, Aaron Schatz here, and it's time for another Masternode setup guide. This time it's for Wire, the actual token of Social Wallet's platform. If you haven't seen Social Wallet, you can head over to their website, socialwallet.io. Before we begin, let's go over the actual purpose of running a Masternode. For the actual blockchain itself, it is very important that Masternodes exist, especially for blockchains that want to have a highly secure and highly robust network. So a Masternode is the same concept of if somebody says, I need some ad nodes, that is a Masternode. A Masternode acts as one of those ad nodes. It allows the actual blockchain to sync from all these Masternodes that are online permanently. They are supposed to remain on there permanently, which is why you need a server to do so. And because this requires some type of server to actually do, that's why Masternodes generally incentivize you for running them. When you get a small transaction, a reward basically for running them, that's the whole thing. It's incentivizing you to keep this Masternode running. And yes, obviously it generates some additional tokens or cryptocurrency in the meantime, but those are just incentivizing you to keep the actual Masternode online. So remember, Masternodes are there to keep the network strong, make it robust, and to allow things like a lot of projects do instant send, dark send, privacy features. Wire has that too. So that's the other good thing about Masternodes. So if a project has Masternodes and you want to be involved in a project, having a Masternode is a great way to be involved in the project. It strengthens the actual network and pretty much allows the network to function optimally the more Masternodes exist. Generally, the more Masternodes that exist on a particular blockchain network, the slower rewards will be for an individual Masternode. However, that means that the project overall is generally stronger when the number of Masternodes increases. So it's a good thing. So remember that. If you saw my last two guides, I'm going to go over what you need. So before you start, let's go over what you need. First things first, you will need a server. And we are going to be using Ubuntu 16.04 long-term 64-bit. And we're going to be using one that has at least 1 gig of RAM, and you're going to need root access. The one that I'm going to show you now is going to have 1 gig of RAM, and I'm obviously going to have root access. So the actual hosting company that I use is Linode. You can check out their website, linode.com. I like them because they have New Jersey-based things. I live in New Jersey. I'm not saying anything that New Jersey is great, but there you go. You will also need some type of access to the server. And for Linux, this generally means SSH access. But if you have KVM, you can do that. There's a whole bunch of different ways you can do that. But again, for this particular guide, we're going to go with SSH access. You will also need this exact video. In the description below, you will see a guide, a text guide with step-by-step instructions. And I will be going through them step by step with this video. So you'll be able to follow along and actually copy and paste the actual commands as you're actually watching this video. You will also need a working Wire core wallet on your personal computer, and that could be the command line version or the graphical version. I am actually going to show you how to use both, because this time I actually took the steps to compile the Qt wallet, which actually doesn't require any steps. I just generally don't use graphical wallets because I run all the daemons in the background. But I'll show you how the actual graphical wallet works in this guide as well. The next one, very important, you will need a single transaction of 35,000 Wire to a receiving address in your wallet, or enough Wire in your wallet to send yourself exactly 35,000 Wire to a receiving address that you own, and to cover the transaction fee that actually occurs. So, what does this mean? This means that you cannot have somebody send you a 35,500 Wire transaction or 34,000 plus another 2,000 to cover it. You need only one transaction of exactly 35,000 Wire. If you don't have that, we can resolve that, no big deal. This doesn't mean that you can't have multiple Masternodes. You just need multiple transactions that are exactly 35,000 each. And we'll go into all that in a little bit. As always, I've mentioned basic knowledge of Linux command line tasks, always highly recommended. It's really simple to follow this guide, and I really encourage you to actually learn a little bit more about Linux. One of the things about these guides that I like to produce is to show you what is actually happening when you actually do installations and stuff. And I think that knowledge is power, and you should always want to learn about the stuff that you're using. So without further ado, let's get into this. Before I go on, I should mention that I am an ambassador for the Social Wallet project. I'm not actually any affiliate of the actual project itself. I'm not part of the actual project team. I merely want the project to succeed because it's a US-based project. It seems really, really thought out, really well done, and I just like where the project is heading. So I reached out and said, hey, I want to evangelize for you, and they were like, yeah, sure, go ahead. So there you go. That's a little caveat I'll throw out there that even though I'm not directly involved with the product, I was made an ambassador. So if you missed the actual pre-sale before, you still have time to actually purchase this. So right now, Social Wallet is on a pause. The platform is supposed to be released around April 28th, but that doesn't mean that you're not going to be able to actually buy tokens for use on the platform. So Wire is the actual underlying token that makes Social Wallet work as a platform. And incidentally, that's the thing that we're going over today, how to do a Wire Masternode guide. If you actually want to purchase Wire, the token sale will resume in about 1 month. And I think the actual time is a few weeks for that. So just if you miss the actual time on the initial pre-sale, don't worry, you'll have your chance to buy it. And actually you'll see the platform in use too, so it'll be a double benefit. Then you can actually say like, oh wow, I really like this platform. Or maybe you don't like it and you don't want to invest in it. But there you go. I see the value. I hope you see the value too. So mark it down on your calendar. Just go to socialwallet.io and you'll be informed of when the actual final sale starts. Now this is the first time I'm going to show you the graphical wallet as I'm showing you right here. But if you're watching this video right now, you should head to the description below and click on the actual Masternode setup guide. It will give you the actual commands as I'm going to go through them. Now these commands right here, the one where it's on the actual personal wallet side, which is this stuff right here, the beginning stuff, is actually going to go through the command line process, which I'll do as well on over here for now. But I wanted to actually show you the graphical portion as well. It's basically the same thing. So if you wanted to actually do these commands in the actual graphical wallet, you could still get to the actual console. You hit Tools, Debug Console, and then you can actually do things like Get Info. And you actually get the Get Info there. And that's basically how you do it. So this command right here where it says Wire CLI Masternode Gen Key, really easy to do that. There's no real way to do that in the wallet itself, like graphically. So what you'd have to do is you'd have to hit Debug Console and then hit Masternode Gen Key, right? So that is the command that we're actually going to use for the actual generation of the Masternode key. So as you can see, that is the first thing we have to do. And what this is basically doing is going to allow us to talk to the Masternode using the same key. Now this key is generated every time you run this command. So I'm going to show you the actual key that's generated, and I'm going to show you the key that's generated when I do it on the command line later. And for purposes of this guide, I'm going to use the command line one because that's the way I want to run it. But here you go. Once you hit this command right here, hit enter, you could see it right here. This is the actual key that you're going to use to actually do the server portion and the actual setup in the Masternode configuration file on the personal wallet. So the other thing you're going to want to need is a scratch pad, which I forgot to mention before. As you could see, I have my IP address of the server all ready to go. And now that I've generated the actual Masternode key, I'm going to put that in here as well. Key. And we'll paste that in there too. And I will replace that when I generate it on the actual the command line one. Now, let's go back to the setup guide and see what's next. So we don't need this anymore, right? No. We don't need this anymore for right now. So, the next step of the guide is to get a new receiving address, right? Because, honestly, look at this. So if I show you what I've gotten right here, I've got 71,000 and change wire. Now, I already have a Masternode running on here to obviously test everything, but as you can see that I don't have another transaction of 35,000 anywhere in here, so I literally screwed up, right? Somebody sent me, I'll show you. Somebody sent me 35,005. Well, that's not good enough. I can't make a Masternode with that. So now I have to correct that. So to do that, what I want to do is, and I recommend you do this with every single Masternode you set up, you should make a new receiving address for it. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a new receiving address. We're going to generate a new receiving address. So basically you go to File, and then you go to Receiving Addresses, and then you can see that here's my 2 receiving addresses right now. And there's no label because I don't need labels. Who needs labels, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to create a new receiving address. And I'm going to create one now. And this receiving address is I'll use throughout the guide now. So if you want to follow this guide, I'm going to use this actual receiving address. So I'm going to hit New, and then I'm not going to label it because that's how I roll. And boom. There you go. So now I've created a new receiving address right here. CC and blah, blah, blah. So I'm going to copy that. Go back to my scratch pad. And I'm going to put the receiving address here. This receiving address doesn't really matter. It only matters for what we're about to do. We need to send a transaction of exactly 35,000 wire to this address, which we are going to do right now. So, now, what we're going to do is we're going to send ourselves a transaction of exactly 35,000 wire. So what you would do is you would say pay to, you'd hit, okay, again, so you go to send, pay to, the address that you just made. That's right, the address you just made. You don't need, this label doesn't really matter. And you're going to do 35,000 wire. That's it. So, see it? 35,000, that's it. It'll say the transaction fee. Don't touch anything else. Don't touch this. Don't touch anything else. Right? That's it. And that's it. You're just going to send it to yourself. If you make a mistake here, don't make a mistake. That's all I'll say. Do not make a mistake here. So now we're going to hit send. Are you sure you want to send? You're going to get charged all this stuff with the transaction fee. So this is the actual amount. 35,000.00 blah, 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 blah. But it doesn't matter. This is where we're actually going to get it from. 35,000. That's the actual thing we're sending, and that's the important. And here we go. Yes, everything is correct. Boom. So let's go to transactions. And we have to wait for it to actually... wait for it to actually... I was freaking out a little bit. You shouldn't freak out because I forgot that the graphical wilds will only show you the actual differences. So if you actually see this right here, payment to yourself, this is the actual transaction that we just sent to ourselves. And you can see that I got charged the actual transaction fee, but you're saying, holy crap, where's my 35,000 wire? Where did it go? Well, it's there. If you look at the overview, it still have the same basic amount. If you actually double click this transaction, you'll see the actual transaction details of the total debit, the total credit, exactly the same. So the only thing I got really charged was the actual transaction fee itself. And as you can see, this is the transaction ID. This is very important, this transaction ID, because this is the ID that you're going to need. That's the transaction for the collateral hash. So that is what we're going to save in here. So we're going to go in here. Oops, we're going to go to here. Transaction ID is this. So that's good. Again, all this stuff, whoops. All this stuff is all on the blockchain. What I'm showing you right now, except for the key, is all public knowledge. So the key is the only thing. The Masternode generated key, never give that out to anybody. I don't care who asked for it, never give that out. That is the only thing that should remain hidden. I'm merely showing you this one because I'm not going to use it in the future. So have at it if you want to try to hack me. It's not going to work. But again, if somebody asks you for your Masternode key, don't give it to them. The receiving address, totally fine. The transaction ID, totally fine. So now that you have a transaction ID, you actually need the actual output index. And the one that's listed here may not be correct. So what we're going to do is we're going to open up the debug console. And then we're going to say Masternode outputs, right? So as you can see, I did it already, but I'm going to show you it again. Masternode outputs. Now, since I have two Masternodes running, you see two outputs here. So the one that I just sent to myself and the one that's already did in the past. So since I know the transaction ID already, C1 blah 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 blah, it's right here, and you can see that the output index is 1. So now we know the index. We have everything we need to actually make the Masternode file. Now that's how you would do it on the actual wallet itself. Now in the actual wallet itself, you're actually going to go into settings, options. you are going to go into Wallet, and you're going to make sure that the Show Masternode tab is on, because you won't actually be able to do anything through the wallet itself. So now that you see the Masternode tab, that's where we're going to go. Over in the Masternodes tab, you can see that I have one Masternode currently running, which I said I did already. And if we go to the All Masternodes tab, and I will show you how to do this in the actual command line wallet as well, because it's fairly trivial to do this. You can see that there's 3 Masternodes running. And as you can see, mine is the oldest, because obviously I'm awesome. No, but anyway, it's all testing in the network and stuff, and then everything seems to be working very well. These public keys are actually the receiving address. So if you see this, this is my receiving address, and these are 2 other ones. So if you want to send something, you can send it to this address right here, my Masternode. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to have to actually edit the Masternode configuration file of your personal wallet, which is this graphical thing right here. To do that, we're going to hit Tools, hit Open Masternode Configuration, but I'm not going to do that right now, because I want to jump to the actual command line portion and do all this over to show you how to do it from the actual command line itself, because that's how I use it. And I would encourage everyone to understand what's actually going on when they're actually using these graphical wallets. So, let us go into the command line version of this and then take the rest of the guide, and we'll just head on through. So, here we go. We are now back at the heart of where I normally do these guides, the actual command line portion. So again, this is my personal wallet right now. So I'm going to tell you when I'll switch to the actual server, but we're not going to do that for a little bit. So this whole section right here in the guide, this first part, is all on the personal wallet side, meaning your own wallet. So this was all done. All this stuff was done in the actual graphical part, except for this part where I said you have to edit all the actual stuff in the Masternode file. So, let me change this to Nano, by the way. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to do the exact same stuff on the actual command line. So, what do I mean by that? Well, remember when I said that the command line is exactly the same as the QT wallet? It is. So if I actually do this, I can actually say get info, and I get all the same info that I actually had from the QT wallet. All the transactions are also there. So if I say wire CLI list transactions, for instance, you will see all the transactions, and these are all Masternode payments. In fact, you should see the actual one that I sent to myself for 35,000 wire right here. This is why I got confused on the actual QT wallet, because in the personal wallet it'll show the send and receive transaction. I mean, on the command line, it'll show you the send and receive transaction. On the personal wallet, it only shows you the actual, the fee, because basically it's the same amount. So it's like, well, why would I show you these two? So that actually freaked me out a little bit, and I got a little scared, but everything's okay. So we're going to do everything the same right now. So again, I'm going to do all this, so just pretend like the actual graphical portion didn't happen. And if you already did the graphical portion, great. You can skip a lot of this stuff in a little bit. I'll tell you when. You basically go to where I'm about to edit the actual Masternode file. So I'll tell you when that happens. But for now, let's just follow along with the guide. So, first things first, again, what do we have to do? We have to generate a Masternode key. Fairly simple. We just tell the command line portion to generate a Masternode key. So how do you do that? Wire CLI. Actually, here, I will do my fancy clear. So this is at the top. So wire CLI Masternode gen key. So you can actually take this command and paste it in there as long as you're in the same directory or whatever. Boom. So now this is the key I'm going to use. So I'm going to copy this, go to my scratch pad, change this key to this. See? That's the old one, that's the new one. So if I generate this multiple times, it'll all be different keys. So it doesn't really matter. Again, me showing you this key doesn't really do anything because I'm not going to use this key in my production use. So, again, if somebody asks you for their Masternode key or for your Masternode key, do not give it to them. Do not give your Masternode key out. End of story. Next, what are we going to do? We're going to generate a new receiving address. And yes, I'm going to generate a new receiving address because it doesn't actually matter. It's fine. You can generate a lot of receiving addresses. It's all fine. But I'm going to show you how to do this from the command line because I think it's important for you to understand what's actually happening. So, from the actual command line, wire CLI, get new address is the actual command that we're going to say to the actual command line option that, hey, I would like a new receiving address. So if I hit enter, boom, there's a new receiving address. So now this is the address that we're going to use instead of this one, right? Great. Whoops, don't want to save that right now. Now, we are going to go to the next step of the guide, and we're going to send this address that I just did 35,000 wire. So again, this is where the actual Qt wallet comes into a little bit more safety measure-y than the command line, because the command line one, you can actually just botch this whole transaction and then 35,000 wires gone. So if you're using the command line like I am all the time, you make sure that everything is double, triple, quadruple checked for this. So the command that we're going to do to send ourselves 35,000 wire is wire CLI send to address, then the address that theoretically we just generated, then the amount, which is 35,000. That's it, nothing else. That's it. Enter. Boom, you will get the transaction ID. So this transaction ID is the new transaction ID here. So we will put that there in our scratch pad. And now, if I do a list transactions on the actual command line, you should see, unless I screwed up everything, oops, I did, there we go, list transactions, you will see the receive transaction ahead of the send, which is always funny, but basically they happen at the exact same time. So, again, this is why I kind of freaked out when I was on the graphical wall, and I was like, oh my god, where's the actual transaction? It's in there, it's just one transaction. It just so happens that the command line one lists them out individually, which I actually happen to like. So, you could see that the transaction is done, transaction equals itself. Now what we're going to do is we're going to do a Masternode outputs, and we're going to see the actual output, the actual index of that. And theoretically, it should be vastly different. The output should not be the same as the ones that I generated before. Now, the other thing I want to make sure is that it at least gets a confirmation. So I'm going to wait till, you see how it says confirms right here, 0? So I'm going to wait till it has at least one confirmation so I can actually continue. And I forgot the actual block time, but it's pretty quick. So we'll just wait a little bit here, and I'm going to show you another command right here while we're waiting. I showed you get info already, right? So there you go. Wait, what other commands can I show you? Oh yeah, so like I was showing you the amount of master nodes. So if I do masternode list, you could see all the master nodes online. It's the 3 of them that I showed you before, and there you go. So again, all this stuff you can get from your wallet too. So this is nothing special for my wallet. Your wallet can show this. So imagine when the Masternode list gets to like 1,000 plus, this is going to be a gigantic list of stuff. You're able to filter this in a whole bunch of ways. I'll show you that probably in another guide. This is no big deal. So let's just see if the transaction, okay, we got one confirmed, we're good to go. So what do I want to do now? I want to actually say, can you give me the actual outputs now? So we're going to say Masternode outputs. Whoops. So I'm going to show you a real trick here. When I always make a little mistake every once in a while. So I'm going to say help Masternode, right? And what you could see is this is how you actually do the thing. So what was I missing? Oh, you want to know what I was missing? I have no idea. Oh, you want to know what I missed? The word outputs. I put outputs. So there you go. So if you do help and then command, it'll give you the actual stuff. So let's just do the correct command, which is Masternode outputs. Boom. And now you can see this one and this one equal, but the index is 0. So now we have the correct everything. So now we go back to the actual setup guide. And we are at this point, we got the actual outputs, right? We grab the transaction output. Boom. So we are on the actual setup of the configuration file for the Masternode itself. What you have to do is you have to edit the actual masternode.conf file on your personal wallet. Now, if you're on Linux like I am, it's located in your home directory, and it's in the .wire directory /masternode.conf. Now, you can use nano to do this. Now, I'm going to show you my file, and I really hope I remember to blank out the first line, because that actually contains the private key for the Masternode I'm currently running. So I'm going to use Nano for this. Actually, I'll just clear the screen first. Then I'm going to actually go on the graphical wallet and show you how to do that. But basically, it's the same thing. So I'm going to show you how to do this on Linux. So you just do this, and .wire, and then masternode.conf. And I hope I remember to blank out the actual top, this one right here. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the end, make sure that we're on another line. Okay, we are on another line. Just going to make sure we're on another line. So how this actually works is you could see this right here. This is the format. So if you're actually following this guide, I'm going to actually give you the actual what's going to be right here. This is the actual format, and it'll look something like this. So we're going to take, what is it? The alias. So we're going to make this, I'm going to call it Masternode 1. And then it's the IP address of the server, which we didn't set up yet, but that doesn't matter. And then the port, which is 6520. I just got to remember if it is. Where is it? I have it here somewhere. Yep, 6520. And then the actual key, all separated by spaces. And then the transaction ID. And then, and these aren't, so the file actually looks like this. All in one line. I'm just showing you that it's, so I'll just show you like this for now. And then the actual output index, which is 0. So this is what the file looks like. This one singular line. And it's going to follow this format right here. I actually have it down here. So I would have just put it down there. Boom, right there. And that's what it looks like with the actual values filled out. So there you go. I'll leave this in the guide. Save that there. So now that I have all this stuff in here, I'm going to not get this tab in here. So I will just take all this stuff and I will put it in the file like so. And it, of course, didn't work that way because it didn't copy it. Oh, it did. Damn it. I'm not used to Nano. Sorry. So we'll just copy that again. There we go. So now I am done. So if we go see up here, that's the end of the file, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to save the file. Now how do I save the file? You hit Control X in Nano, you hit yes because it's saying, oh, you're going to overwrite the actual file. I don't care. Of course I do. I want to hit yes. So I hit Y, hit enter, and you're good to go. Now, if you want to do this from the graphical wallet, very simple. I'll show you that right now. Now we're back on the graphical wallet. I'm going to show you actually how to do the same thing from the graphical portion. So if you're on Windows, you're on Linux, and you actually have the Qt wallet, very simple. You go to Tools and you hit Open Masternode Configuration File, and it'll be the exact same file, except you won't have to do any of the command line stuff that I just did. So if you hit this, you can see it opens up here. And again, if I put these all in one line how they're supposed to be, I really hope that I'm blanking out the first line and only showing you the second one here. And this is the line that we actually added in, so you can see that it's all in one line. And if that wasn't there, all you have to do is just add it the way I said. You say the alias that you said, the IP address, colon, the port, which is 6520, the actual Masternode private key that we generated, the actual transaction ID from that one transaction that we sent, and then the output index of that, which you can get from Masternode outputs. So once you have all that in the file, you save the file, and then you basically have to shut down the wallet. So that's what we're going to do right now. So I saved the file, and hopefully I, again, took out the top one so you couldn't see it. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go back to the guide, and it says, what does it say? It says restart the wallet. So if I was on the actual command line one, I would do these exact commands. But since I'm not, I'm just going to shut down the wallet. And then I'm going to show you how to do it on the command line one. So what are we going to do right here? Exit the wallet. If you're on the command line version, like I always do, you basically want to send a stop command to the actual wallet, which actually stops it. And right now, we are the exact same as the graphical one. However, since this is the command line one, we could restart it immediately, since it doesn't really matter. Wire D, daemon, bam. So if you copy that command, that's how you restart the wallet. For the graphical one, just restart it. Just open it back up. The reason I'm having you do this is to basically lock this transaction ID that you've done. And what do I mean by locking it? It means this is very important. When you have tokens or currencies or whatever, that can stake, you do not want that transaction to be staked. You want it to be locked in your wallet. So the transaction never gets broken apart at all. And that's very important. That Masternode configuration file locks that transaction. So your Masternode transaction will never get destroyed, basically. So that's why you want to make sure that after you do that change in the Masternode configuration file, restart the wallet, and that transaction is now locked until you take it out of the file. Incidentally, if you ever want to get rid of your Masternode and want to spend that cash, just take it out of the Masternode configuration file, restart the wallet, and you could spend away. Now we're moving on to the actual server portion of this guide, and this is basically the same as any other Masternode that I set up for the most part until you get to the actual currency itself. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through all the steps. So the first things first, do you remember the IP address of the server that you created? Well, I do, because I wrote it on my scratch pad right here. So now what we're going to do is we're going to log in as root first. And everybody asks me, what SSH program do you use? Again, I use SSH because on Linux, it's called SSH. And then I'm going to hit root at this. So now, this terminal that I'm showing you is now going to be on the server as soon as I hit enter. Now it's saying, oh my god, I've never seen this server before. Do you trust it? Yeah, I do. I'm not going to tell you my password. So now I'm on the actual server as root. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a regular user. I don't want things running as root. I just don't. And I don't think you should either. I know a lot of guides say, like, oh, just run everything as root, no big deal. I think it is a big deal. You should never get in the habit of running anything as root. So what we're going to do is we're going to add user. This time, instead of calling it my name, which is Aaron Schatz, which I normally do, I'm going to call it Masternode to throw things in a loop right here. So I'm going to create a user called Masternode. So we're going to say add user Masternode. I am not going to give it any other thing besides that, but I will give it a password. So enter a password that you choose. You're going to have to enter it twice. So for giggles, I'll just call it, let's see here. Good, I got it right twice. Now, for a name, I don't care. I'll just hit enter for all these. Is all this information correct? Yes, it is. That's it. Now, we're going to add that user to the sudo group. That means that while we don't have root access, we could still do things that root can do. So, whatever. To do that, the command you're going to type is this one, vi sudo. And it won't actually run vi, it'll run nano, which is actually funny. So vi sudo, enter. So this is nano, like I showed you before. And now, we're going to come down here, you take your cursor down here, just space this out a little bit. We're going to add the user right here. The user was Masternode. And then you see this line up here that says all equals all. We're going to copy that line. So you're going to say all, so you're going to put Masternode space all equals, parentheses, all, colon, all, end parentheses, space, all. So you're basically making the Masternode user stuff look exactly like the root stuff. Now, to get out of nano, you want to save the file. So you're going to hit exit, which is Control X, and it's going to ask you, do you want to save? You want to hit yes, which is Y, and it's going to ask you for the file to write. You just hit enter. And that's it. You're good to go. Now we're going to log in as that user. So this is going to be different depending on the actual stuff that you've entered. For our intensive purposes, we're going to basically exit out of here. And now we're back on my main box. And we're going to SSH back into that server as the Masternode user. Just like that. And put in the password. And now we're on the actual box as that user. If you want to make sure that sudo actually works, you can actually type sudo -s. It'll ask you for your password. And now you should be logged in as root. And there you go. That's how you know sudo works. You can hit exit here. You get back to the actual user's prompt. So now we're going to do everything through sudo. We don't need root anymore. In fact, if you know how to actually lock this down, you can just turn off root access. You don't need it anymore. So now everything about the guide is going to be pretty much copy and paste. And that's what I'm going to do. So get your guide handy. We're just going to start copying and pasting. So I'm going to hit, so this is the first command, sudo apt-get update y update. So basically, I just completely said that wrong. So basically, I'll just paste the command and tell you what it's doing. So what this is basically doing is saying, apt, can you please update all your sources and don't ask me for anything. That's what the -y is. So we're going to do that. It's going to go to all the sources that are in the actual apt list and then say, okay, give me all the fresh packages that you got. So now that's done. We're also going to install the thing that allows us to put PPAs in. And PPAs are basically third-party software repositories. And it's just like easy installation. And the one we're going to put is the Bitcoin one because we need a lot of stuff from Bitcoin. Most of these projects are forked from Bitcoin or Pivx or Dash or something like that. So now that we've installed the thing that allows us to do the next command, we are going to add the actual Bitcoin PPA. That's what this command does right now. Sudo apt add repository. Yes! PPA Bitcoin, Bitcoin, boom. That's it. We are now have the Bitcoin PPA installed and ready to go. We are now going to tell apt to update its list again because the Bitcoin PPA has been added. So now that's done. Now this singular command of all this stuff is pulling things like the software development packages and any other dependencies that we need to build the actual Wire project itself. So just take this entire command and you're free to inspect any of these packages. For instance, Git, we need to pull the actual source code. These are all development kits that are actually needed to actually build the actual Wire project itself. You need things like automake and autoconf and all this stuff like build essentials, SSL, all this stuff are all base packages from the actual Ubuntu repository. So my suggestion is just to take this entire line, hit here, hit enter. It's going to ask you nothing. It's just going to do it because I forced the actual yes in the actual thing by this little -y here. So once that's actually done, we'll move on. Oh, by the way, so this is actually common to almost every one that, every crypto project that's done. There's actually extra stuff in here that you don't need because the good thing about Wire is it does not require Sentinel. And that is fantastic because Sentinel is awful. So things like Python and virtual environment you don't need, but it doesn't hurt to have them just in case you have multiple things on the server that you need. So they just install additional packages that you will never use if you don't have multiple coins on the server. I use multiple coins on a single server. I never use the same coin on the same server. That kind of defeats the purpose of having a Masternode. So now that that's done, we are going to ask the actual operating system, hey, can you upgrade all the packages that are out of date? And that's what's going to happen right now. Now, there is a second command that we can do if you're familiar with Ubuntu called dist upgrade, which I don't want to do. I don't want to cause any packages that may cause other things to become broken. So I'm just going to merely do a regular upgrade. So just be mindful of that. You don't want to do a dist upgrade. You just want to do a regular upgrade. Oh, and by the way, if you're on Linux and you're running like a later version of Ubuntu, it is possible to actually compile all the actual wallets on like 17.10 for instance. And I know because I'm running it. And in fact, that Qt wallet that I showed you before was running on 17.10. So don't tell me it's not possible because it is possible because I have it done. So what's gonna happen is I added this little line right here because you'll see in a second. Here we go. Bam! It says blah 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 blah, new version exists. You want to keep the local version installed, so basically all I'm saying is just hit enter. Done. And it's going. And it's going. It's going. It's almost done. That's it. This is all basically the same stuff. And it's going to continue to be the same stuff. So right now we're going to reboot the server. And the easy command for that is sudo reboot. And as soon as I hit that, it'll kick me out of the actual server like it just did. We have to actually log back into the server, which is funny because I have to say that right here. Log back into server. And now we're going to do that as the actual Masternode user. So let's go ahead and do that. I remember the password. Yes, I remember the password. All right, we're good to go. Now, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to configure a swap file. And I say just in case because if you got 2 gigs of RAM, theoretically you shouldn't need this. but honestly, it doesn't hurt to actually make a 2 gig swap file, so we're going to go ahead and do that. So, first command is basically allocating a 2 gig file. And the file is located in swap file in the root directory. The next one is basically saying, can you change the file permissions to only be readable by root, or by the owner, which in this case is root, and writable, and that's what we did. The next command, we're saying, can you make this an actual swap file? And it's like, okay, I can do that. And then the next command is saying, can you turn on the swap file? And it's like, okay, I can do that too. And this command, it's kind of fancy, but I'm going to explain what this is doing. Basically, it's saying, I'm going to echo this, and echo just means to say it on the command line. And then I'm going to pipe that in to the end of a file that's called etc/fstab. That file is basically the mount file, saying upon reboot or upon any boot, can you mount these things automatically? And one of those things is the swap file. So it's saying, every time you boot, please mount the swap file and turn on the swap file. So that's basically what this command basically does. So now that we've configured the swap file, the next thing we want to do is we want to configure the firewall. And you say, well, I never installed the firewall. Oh, actually, you did. You did, because this command up here actually has a firewall that was installed along with the command. See? I try to save you a lot of steps here. So, first thing we're going to do is we're going to tell the actual firewall to be a firewall. We're going to deny all the incoming requests. Now, we're going to say anything that's outgoing we trust, because it's how we roll. We're going to allow SSH access, because otherwise you really can't use the server itself by doing any maintenance on it. It's kind of weird. Unless you were actually on the physical server, then it would make sense. But since this is on the internet, you want SSH. Then this one is the highly important one, because this is how the actual Masternode communicates with its network. You need to allow port 6520 TCP. So that's what this command actually does, saying please allow port 6520 TCP. Yes, great. Now we're going to enable the firewall, and this command is fairly dangerous. This command might throw you out of the actual server itself because it might interrupt the SSH connection. In fact, when you do this command, it's going to say, oh my god, this might disrupt the SSH connections. Do you want to proceed? We're going to hit yes, because we're going to go throw caution through the wind. Boom! And nothing happened. See? ls, by the way, is a list command. I might show you some commands in a later video, but list is, there's nothing in this directory. So, this is all the same stuff that we've done on any guide pretty much so far. So now, we're going to get to nearly, this is the stuff that's actually going to change for an actual project itself. So, because this is wire, we're going to do some things for wire itself now. So now, put on your wire hat, here we go. First things first, we're going to make sure we're in the home directory, which we already were. So that's fine. So that's what this command does, cd tilde. Tilde is your actual home directory. So if I said this, if I said echo tilde, it's like home masternode. That's the directory you're in. So that's what that means. So now what we're going to do is we're going to create an actual directory in our home directory called Masternode. Now you're thinking to yourself, well, I don't understand. I already have a Masternode directory. No. You have a user called Masternode, and that's his home directory. So I want another directory that's in that home directory. So we're going to do that. Just trust me on this one. Call it Masternode. So we're going to make directory. That's what mkdir stands for. Masternode. So now if I do a list command ls, you will see that there is one directory called Masternode. We will now change directory, which is cd, into that directory, Masternode. Boom. So now we're in the Masternode directory, and there is nothing in it, as you can see. So now we're going to clone the actual wire core project into this directory. So you will see a singular directory that has been created called wire core. So we will descend into this directory, wire core. Now, wire core contains the entire source code of the wire project. And the commands to actually generate this stuff is really easy. You basically have to do 3 commands to actually build the wallet after you did all the other stuff that I've done with you. So basically the command is this, autogen.sh, in the directory. So when you see something like period, slash, and then a command, it's saying in this directory, run this command. So / autogen.sh, enter, and it's going to do its thing. There it goes, generating files. Da, da, da. There it goes. Don't worry, this is not the part where you get to walk up and make a sandwich yet. That's coming up soon. So now this is done. You can see that there was nothing, no problems here. So the next one you're going to do is this one, configure. Now you're basically saying, okay, I need you to actually configure all the stuff for when I want to actually build the project. So that's the actual configure command. So you hit configure, it's going to do all the checks. It's going to make sure all your dependencies are there. So when it actually goes to build it, nothing just breaks. Oh, by the way, you can see right here, there's no Qt found. So basically it's not going to build a Qt wallet. If you have the Qt libraries on your computer, it will automatically build a Qt wallet for you. You do not necessarily have to force it. If you go and, I'll show you how to do that later, actually. Let's move on. So you can see, like, here's the options. With the wallet, yes, no graphical stuff and all this other stuff. But basically, everything is ready to go. So here's the point where you're going to actually get up and go make a sandwich. When you hit the last command called make. Make actually builds the binaries for you to use. So hit make, and now get up and walk away. So you can come back in about, I don't know, we'll just say check it in 10 minutes and then check it in 20 minutes because make takes a while to actually build. So what it's doing right now, it's going through all the source code and compiling it. Depending how much RAM you have, depending on the processor speed, it's going to take varying time to actually build this. So this is the time for you to get up, stretch your legs, and come on back in about, check it in about 15-20 minutes. You should be good to go. By the way, if you see any things that are warnings and stuff, that's not a big deal. It's only when things are errors. That's a problem. So I'll show you what it looks like when it's all said and done. As you can see, everything all compiled. You can see there's no errors, no nothing. It's all there, all fine. So basically all we're going to do now is, and this is technically optional. If you're like me, and I'm pretty lazy, I generally don't do this, but I should. What we're going to do now is we're basically going to say, okay, we're going to move these files to where you can access them anywhere. So there is a concept in Linux called your path. And your path means if you run a command without saying the direct directory that you're accessing it, where should it look to find the actual program? So I believe that if I do this, you'll see the path. And you can see that my path are all these directories. So basically, if I just say a command like ls, for instance, ls is not actually in this current directory, but it's in one of these paths directory, right? So that's what that means. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to say the actual files that we just made, we're going to move them into a directory that's in our path. And user bin just happens to be in that path. So what we're going to do is we're going to cd to the source directory, src, and you can see a whole bunch of files in there, right? ls, list, remember, ls lists all the files out. We're basically going to move the actual file into the user bin directory. There is something we can do before this called strip, but honestly it doesn't really matter. We don't really care about that. If you want to, you can. You can learn about what strip does. Strip basically strips out all the extra stuff from the actual executable that you don't necessarily need. But honestly, I don't feel like putting it in the guide because it's an extra step that doesn't really matter. So, we're going to move the actual 3 programs that the actual wire core needs. The first one is the actual CLI itself. So we're going to say sudo move the actual wire CLI, and you can see that I have the actual directory in front of it, which is the current directory, and we're going to move it to the user bin. So you can just copy and paste this exact command as it's written and does the same thing. It's going to probably ask you for your password because it's probably been a while since you actually put your password in. There you go. And then we'll just do the same thing with the next one. Wire D is the actual daemon. And the TX, I have literally no idea what this does, but I'm pretty sure it has something to do with the transactions itself. I'm not sure what that is, but I know it's required by every project. So we're going to test it now. So theoretically, you can do this command from anywhere. So I'm going to actually just show you what happens if I'm in my home directory. Now, the actual executables are nowhere to be found in this home directory, but since we moved them to something in our path, it doesn't matter. So we're going to say wired D basically, and then we're going to pass in daemon to it. And it's going to complain, saying, hey, you have no configuration files set up. And you really should have one, because you need to have an RPC user and password in there. And as you could see, it gave me one right here. And in fact, we don't care about that one. Or you do. You can actually copy and paste it right here. So if you take it, you can copy. And what we're going to do is, since basically Wire forces you to actually have a configuration file with an RPC user and password in it, we actually need to actually make a configuration file anyway for the Masternode at the same time. So we might as well do that right now. So to do that, we're going to basically use nano to actually edit the file. The file is located in your home directory, which is /.wire/wire.conf, and you could just paste the command in there that I've added in the guide. Hit this command. It'll open up nano with a blank file. So if you see that, if you actually took their stuff, you could just use that. But I gave you an example right here. So I'm going to fill in. This is actually the stuff that you would need to put in, and here's how it looks. And I'm going to not. I don't care. The tabs don't really matter. So we'll just leave it like this. So RPC user is a random string, and by random string I mean alphanumeric stuff. You could just do like that. RPC password, you do like that. Oops. Cancel that. Oops, made a mistake there. Hit the wrong command. Put that there. And then the RPC allow IP is the actual loopback address. So you don't want to touch that. Listen, basically we're saying this is you want this thing to listen. It's going to be an ad node, right? And you want it to be a server, and it's going to be a daemonized process, so it's going to run in the background. You want to log timestamps, even though you'll never ever check them out. I'm sure you'll never check them out. Max connections 256. This is generic for almost every project that you see. External IP. Do you remember what it is? Of course you do, because you have a scratch pad that you've created, right? So I'll just put this in here. Now, a lot of projects will actually have you put a colon in there and the actual port. In most projects, this doesn't actually matter, and in Wire, that's one of them, so you don't have to put that in there. There's other things like bind and all this other stuff, but I've tested this out. You don't need to use this. So the last thing that you'll need is the actual key that you actually generated before, and that's the key that you'll never give to anybody else. So you change that to the actual key, and that's great for that line. And then the last line is Masternode 1, meaning I want to make a Masternode out of this. Now you're all done. So what did you have to do? Well, you want to save the file. To save the file, you basically hit Control-X, saying I want to exit. You hit exit, it says, hey, you modified this. Do you want to save it? You hit Y for yes. And then it says, what file do you want to save? And you're going to say enter, because it's the same file that you were modifying. All done. You're good to go. So now what we're going to do is we're going to try to run the daemon again, and it should not complain at you now. So let's just check it out. Wire server starting. Awesome. We're like halfway there. Actually, we're more than halfway there because it's already all done on the server side. So now we actually want to make sure that everything is all working now. So we're going to ask the CLI, please give me some information. Yes. And you can see that blocks are downloading. So you can actually run this command multiple times, which we will do. And you can see 4500, 5200, 56. We'll let this go for a little bit because we can actually add the two commands. Now, in the other two guides that I've done, this is where we would install Sentinel, but thankfully we don't need to install Sentinel because it doesn't require it. But what you are going to want to do is you're going to want to make sure this runs on reboot. So we will do that by going to our user's cron tab. So you hit cron tab E, and in every other guide I said to use Vim, but no, you can use Nano since as we were using. Hit 2, and now you're going to go all the way down to the last line, so a new line, and then you're going to, just like this, hit at reboot, and then wire D daemon. And now you can save the file by hitting Control-X, Y, Enter. And that's it. Upon reboot, it'll automatically start the wire daemon again. Now, let's go down a little bit more. What's actually going on here? What am I saying to this? Why are these three periods looking like this? There, that's better. I'm saying that you want to make sure that the Masternode is all synced up and ready to be activated. And what do I mean by that? Well, let's just see what this command actually returns. mn sync status. And you can see that the blockchain is synced. The Masternode list is there. Winner is there. All these failures are 0, which is good. You don't want any failures. And everything looks good. So if you run this for a couple of times, I'm going to show you what happens. There you go. See when that thing pops up to 999 right there? That's important. Good to go. This is all ready to do. As long as most of these are good, like as long as the blockchain is synced, it's true, and then the last Masternode list is there and everything, you should be able to go back on the actual personal wallet side and get ready to actually do this. So now, that's all the setup on the actual server part. You're done with the server part. You can exit the server, and now we're going to go back on the personal wallet side. I am on my personal wallet again. This is the personal wallet side. There you go. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just start the Masternode, and I will show you how to do this from the graphical portion as well. But the command is really simple. You could do this command in the graphical wallet too, manually. So what we're going to do is we're going to tell the CLI, hey, can you start a Masternode for me? And we're going to start it by the alias, and this is right. This command is slightly different than the ones you've seen in other guides because this is forked from a newer version of the actual core stuff that it's forked from. So this next one, 0, says lock the wallet after, but I don't have the wallet actually encrypted, so you don't have to do that anyway. So just put 0, it doesn't really matter. And then the actual alias that we use is Masternode1, MN1. And after this command is ran, it should theoretically say successful, and it does. And there you go. It is now successfully started. And that's it. You can walk away. You're all done. However, I'm going to show you how to do this from the actual graphical wallet right now. So let's redo this in the graphical wallet. Now in the graphical wallet side, the command, you don't need the actual command, but if you wanted to put the command in, it's actually pretty easy. You go to Tools, Debug Console, and it's literally the same command as it was. But you don't have to. If you actually enabled the Masternodes tab, you can actually just go to the Masternodes tab. And as you can see, it shows the both Masternodes currently there. Now, if I actually came to the graphical wallet first, you would actually see one with the status of missing, because it's basically hasn't been started, or with a different status than enabled. It is at that point you will either select it and hit Start Alias, or you can actually just hit Start Missing, and it'll just turn on every one of them at the same time. So if you're setting up multiple Masternodes, you can actually do all this at once. You can set them all up on the server side, and then start them all at once with this one easy command. And that's basically it. That's really it. So remember, if you want, I'm going to actually show you some additional commands too, and I'll actually show you, these commands apply to the actual command line as well. So I want to show you some interesting stuff. So if you go here, all Masternodes, right, and you can see the fourth one that I've made right here. But let's just say you're on the actual command line, and I'm going to open up this debug console to actually show you how this actually works. So a couple of the interesting commands that you would want to do are, one of them is list conf. So if you're on the actual command line wallet, a list conf, a Masternode list conf will actually show the same information as this screen is doing right there. So if we do something like Masternode list conf, you could see, and I'm going to hopefully blank this out so you can't see the top one in the list because it shows you the actual private key. Again, do not share the private key. You could share the transaction, that's fine. You could share the receiving address. Do not share the private key. The Masternode generated key, do not share that. So this is helpful to understand if your Masternode is working. And again, you can just go to the actual, this right here in your wallet, the screen right here, it shows the same thing, except this is from how you do it from the command line. Some other interesting things, you can actually do Masternode list, which will give you every Masternode on the actual network. And this is all public knowledge right here. So once you see all this stuff, you can see all of them on the actual network itself. All this is public information, it's on the blockchain. You could do things like Masternode count, which gives you an easy count. There's 4, there's 1 in the queue, which is probably mine that I just made. So that's it. And when you actually get to this and you start making your own Masternodes, I'm sure there's going to be way more than 4 on the actual network. There's going to be lots. So this is going to be one big project. So if you're part of the project and you've bought some wire to get started, congratulations. I think this is going to be a really awesome thing. And yeah, that's basically it. You're done. Let's go grab a drink, or however, I suggest seltzer because I don't drink and I don't like soda. But seltzer is great, so you should definitely pick up some seltzer. All good to go. That's basically it. If you enjoyed the guide, you know, check out socialwallet.io. If you want to throw some wire my way, I actually put the receiving address in the actual guide itself. It's up to you, no big deal. I actually thoroughly enjoy doing these guides. So if you have any feedback, please let me know. Again, it's the first time I actually showed how to do things in the graphical wallet. Not my cup of tea because I am a command line guy, but there you go. Hope this was helpful, everyone. Thanks for watching. Definitely see you in the next one.